Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's video, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about, I got to get back on the road, but we're going to talk about buying a gas versus buying a diesel. Which one's a little bit better, or, you know, I guess there are pros and cons to both the diesel and the gas, right? So right off the bat, guys, I'm not trying to emphasize one's better than the other. I'm just trying to emphasize, you know, kind of filter in what application works for, you know, as far as a gas goes, or, you know, a gas dually truck or a diesel dually truck. So right off the bat, just to keep it, you know, straightforward, I would say a gas engine is going to be good for the individual that is just driving around town. And typically, if they have to tow around town, and what do I mean by around town is 200 miles round trip within your home base, whatever that means. But if you're towing under 10,000 pounds, I think you should consider getting a gas, especially if you're just towing around town or whatever it is that you're doing, mainly because the cost. Sometimes gas can be cheaper at the pump than diesel, and sometimes it goes the other way around, where diesel's cheaper at the pump than gas. So I can't really tell you that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? However, what I can tell you is that gas will always be cheaper to maintain when it comes to your regular service, as in an oil change, transmission flush, you know, things like that. And I'll give you a quick example. So if like you have to go to Walmart, you do your oil changes yourself, a gasser is probably going to get you, what, a gallon and 3 quarts, maybe 2 quarts, give or take, on a filter. So you're going to be roughly about 70 to give or take $85. We'll say $90 just for, you know, just to play it safe on an oil change with filter. You go with the diesel, you're right out the bat. I mean, you're 3 gallons. Each gallon's about $30. Well, it's like $20, I think, if I remember right, on the cheap end. But if you go, you know, if you're mid-grade level, I guess, on oil quality, then you're roughly about $30. And if you want something really good, then you're about $50 a gallon. So times 3, you're about $150 plus the filter. So that's another, I don't know, $30. So you're about $180 just for an oil change, as far as, you know, the high-end quality stuff goes. You know, I'm not saying do it. I'm saying that's where the numbers kind of land at. Now, let's just say you go to the shop. You have to take it into a quick lube or whatever, right? A gasser's going to run you about $160, I would imagine, give or take. Diesel's going to be about $250 to $400, depending on, again, it just depends on the brand of the oil and quality and blah, blah, blah. But that's one of those things. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. A gas will always be cheaper to service. At times, it may be easier to service. And you know, as far as, you know, turning a wrench on a gasser, typically they're easier to work on. Typically. Not all the time, but, you know, they are. You know, water pumps, or, you know, serpentine belt, or, you know, your basic stuff, you know, brakes. They're a little bit cheaper, I would say, or just about, you know, as far as regular maintenance go. But at the end of the day, a gasser is more convenient for that individual. Now, if you're an individual that tows day in and day out over 10,000 pounds, and you're out away from home at least 200 to 400 miles round trip or more, and you're dealing with mountains and hills, you know, and all that stuff, then you definitely want to consider a diesel. For reason number one would be the exhaust brake. If you're climbing up the hill, just that by itself, a diesel's designed to just keep that power, that sustainable power climbing up. You're not having to worry so much about, like, you know, like, how do I say this? It's kind of hard to explain it when, you know, you've never really jumped into the gasser. But I guess the gas engine can definitely pull on a hill, but you're gonna feel the struggle, if that makes sense. You're gonna feel, you know, you're gonna hear the engine fan kick on. You know, if you're able to read out your temperatures on your transmission, your coolant and your oil, you're gonna see all that spike up. And in my opinion, I feel like, yeah, even though the cooling system's up to date, you know, in 2025 standards or whatever you want to call it, I still feel like that engine is still struggling. You know, that the gases will always have a struggle of some sort climbing up the hill, whether it's a 3-mile up climb or if it's like a 6-mile up climb. It just, you feel some type of way as the miles, progress, and while you do it more consistent. Versus the diesel, the diesel doesn't really, it just doesn't, you can feel it, yes, but it's just, you can definitely feel that even if you're at a low RPM, it can still, I'm not saying you should do it low RPM, but I'm saying the sustainable power just seems more dialed in, so to speak, right? Like the low end torque, it's hard to explain, but it just, you feel more comfortable is what I'm trying to tell you. Climbing up a hill, even if it's a long, steep hill climb, you're okay with it, you know what I mean? Because you're set up for it. Now, going downhill, this is where the exhaust brake comes into play, and this is where the big advantage of having a diesel comes in hand. Because for one, you're not putting a lot of stress on your brakes, therefore you're not wearing them out, therefore you're saving money on the long run because you don't have to change your brakes consistently out. Because going down the hill, you turn on your exhaust brake, yes, you're gonna have to use your brake pedal at one point or two, just to maintain your speed or bring down your speed at a 5-mile, 10-mile increment or 7-mile, whatever. So it doesn't fly out, you know what I mean? So it doesn't catch up, and your next thing you know, you're going faster than what you anticipate. But it's more on the rare side when you got to use your brake pedal. It's just one of those things that, at least Cummins, I know Ford and Chevy, they're not the greatest, but I know Cummins does a phenomenal job when it comes down to their exhaust brake system. Like, man, it pulls you. You definitely feel that engine retarder, so to speak, going towards, or the back pressure, whatever the hell they call it, slowing you down. And gas doesn't have that, and that's a big deal, because if you're towing and you're going down a hill and you don't understand that dynamic of how not riding your brakes, so to speak, for too long, because that metal rubbing up against the brake pad, I mean, you're gonna warm up the rotor really hot. And when you're riding your brake just to try to maintain to bring down your speed at a 5-mile, 10-mile increment, because you're so heavy, and the downhill is getting steeper and steeper. I mean, guys, that honestly, if you don't know what you're doing, that can become very dangerous. And yeah, I know everything's more robust and blah blah blah, but at the end of the day, the exhaust brake, for me, in my opinion, will always be the go-to as far as relying on my load, as far as making it down safe goes. So that's the big advantage of a diesel. And again, that's why I'm narrowing in. Why go with the diesel or why go with the gasser? It kind of just depends on you, and that's why I'm trying to tell you guys, don't go and buy a gasser expecting to make diesel power, if that makes sense. I mean, you might make it on flat ground on a takeoff, that's fine, but diesel is not about like how fast can you go 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. It ain't about that, guys. It's about how long can you maintain towing your whatever weight you got at a consistent speed, without warming up your transmission, without warming up your coolant and your oil. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to anticipate some temperatures going up, of course, but there's remedies to it. You turn on your heater, roll your windows down, and don't go so crazy on the throttle. Keep it at like 30% throttle. So if your gas pedal's like this and it goes all the way down, just go from here to there, and that's it. You don't got to do any more, because then you're just asking for trouble. But there's so many remedies to it, is what I'm trying to say. Gas, on the other hand, man, you're gonna be running that thing. I mean, it's gonna be just, you're gonna feel not cool about it. It's gonna be screaming like, holy cow, like, damn, this thing's not meant for the hills for long term. But anyways, that's what I want to emphasize to you guys: gas versus diesel. And of course, not to forget, diesels, you have to change out their fuel filters and their water separators, which is a separate expense, anywhere between, you got to do that every 10,000 miles, in my opinion, at the latest, 7,000 at the earliest. And that's about, if you go with factory stuff, you're, for Ford or Chevy or Dodge, you're still about $200 to $400, I will just say $300. So that's kind of one of those things. I know the the manufacturers say, oh, you can change your oil filters and fuel filters every 20 to 30,000 miles. And you know what? If that's what you want to do, you go ahead and do it, but don't expect your truck to last that long. I'm just going to throw it out there. I do my oil changes every 5,000 miles, and I do my fuel filter water separator every 7,000 miles. It kind of just varies on the weather, but for the most part, I do it every 7,000 miles. I know you guys, some people are going to be like, you're crazy, that's stupid, you're throwing money away. And yes, on the long run, I kind of am throwing money away, but on the short run, I am. On the long run, it's cheap insurance because I'm avoiding to, screw up my fuel system, my injectors, my fuel rails, all that stuff, my pump. So cheap insurance. I'd rather pay $300 than $10,000. So that's the way I see it. And that's the other thing about owning a diesel, is it's a lot more on the meticulous side with how you maintenance your truck. Gas, on the other hand, you don't really got to worry about all that. So it kind of goes both ways, in my opinion. I think it goes both ways, and how you take care of it, whether you own a gas or a diesel. I am a strong believer that if you take good care of your truck, it will take good care of you. And what I mean by that is, do your maintenance sooner than recommended by the manufacturer. You will thank me later down the road. Now, don't cheap out on oil, and don't cheap out on your filters and all that. I get it. If you get in a hard time, I understand, do it or whatever, do what you got to do. But I'd rather, I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is, I'd rather you put cheap stuff than to neglect an oil change and surpass your mileage increment or whatever, your service interval. So it's kind of one of those things that, again, you take care of your truck will take care of you. So at the end of the day, it really is up to you if you want to go with the gasser. It really is up to you if you want to go with the diesel. I told you the pros and cons to it. I think, in my opinion, if you're going to be running all the time, every time, towing out of your home base, over 200, 300 miles, then just go with the diesel. If you're making decent enough money on your loads, then definitely go with the diesel. Gasser, I just feel like you're just, it works, but you're not going to last. It's just not going to last as long as a diesel, especially if you're the guy that wants to keep them long term. So anyways, I'm going to wrap up this video. It's getting a little long, and I don't anticipate it being this long, but yeah, 12 minutes is kind of long. If you guys found this information useful, or the video useful, hit the thumbs up button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Comment down below if there's anything you guys would like to know as far as, getting into Hotshot, or the pros and cons of whatever it is that you're kind of digging around, and I'll do the best to answer to the best of my knowledge and stuff. So anyways, subscribe to the channel, guys, and as always, may the Lord bless you, and I will catch you on the next one.